Hi, I'm Orgone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be making small pet orgonite, and it looks something like this. I will be using two different types of resins today: epoxy resin with the alcohol inks and polyester casting resin. So we're going to be doing both at the same time, and we'll see the differences, and we'll go ahead and make a whole batch of the small pet orgonite. So if you're into that, stay tuned. Also, I wanted to tell you I do make large pet orgonite, and I did a video on this. So if you're interested, I'll leave the link in the description box so you can check out that video. So if you're ready to get started, stay with us. Okay, so we have a lot going on today. I'm going to be using both of these molds, one with epoxy resin and one with polyester casting resin. So I hope this video won't be too confusing for you. I'm going to use the epoxy resin because I'm using alcohol inks today. Even though the alcohol inks will dye the polyester casting resin, in the epoxy resin, it has kind of a blooming effect they call petri dish. So that's the effect that I want for some of my pet orgonite, and the others I'm just going to dye with the color. So hopefully you'll see what I mean when we do this. So yeah, let me show you some of the things we're going to put in. I've got these little tiny wire wrapped quartz crystal pieces that I'm going to put in the foreground, and I've made some smaller spirals for this size piece, and I got these great little heart charms. My molds are hearts, so these little heart charms are going to look nice in those. So for my metals, I'm using brass shavings as well as copper BBs. And for my crystals, for these pieces, I'm going to use beach sand. Beach sand because they are tiny little quartz crystals, and they're perfect for smaller pieces such as this. And we're going to be coloring them so they will have other pretty things in them than pretty gemstones. So yeah, let's get started. First, I wanted to show you how to make the spiral. You take a piece of copper, mine's about 5 inches long for this size spiral. You want to grip it in the middle with your needle nose pliers, and then just twist both sides around. And so there you have it, is a small spiral. So I'll just add this to our stuff here. And I think I'm going to pour some of the epoxy resin first, and we'll get the alcohol inks in there. So I want to fill maybe about 3 to 4 hearts worth. So I'm gonna do an ounce full of each of these two parts. Epoxy resin is a 2-part resin, so I'm going to use half an ounce of each side. This side should be a little more fluid. And with epoxy resin, you want to stir it really good, so stir it for at least 2 minutes. Okay, so I have my resin all mixed up, and I'm just going to pour a small amount into each of the cavities. Okay, so that got 6 cups worth, or 6 cavities worth. And I don't know if you're familiar with using alcohol inks. I'm using a set by Let's Resin, and I love all the colors except purple because it has like a pink cast to it. So we're going to use some other colors. And I'm using peach red, orange, and yellow. And to push your alcohol inks down to the bottom layer, you want to use the white. And this gives the petri dish effect. Okay, so we got one done. I got some of the peach red in this other one, so I want to add some of that pink to that one. I'll go ahead and do the same thing to this one. Okay, so I got all my alcohol inks poured into my epoxy resin, and epoxy resin takes quite a bit longer to cure than polyester resin, so we're going to let this sit for several hours while we're focusing on our polyester resin. Now, my polyester casting resin comes in a big gallon, a 10-gallon jug. So, oh, I need to go get a measuring cup. I'll be right back. Okay, I got my measuring cup, and I am going to use I'm going to use 2 ounces of resin. That may be too much, I'm not sure, but I'm going to use that much to start. Yeah, 2 ounces is probably going to be more than enough. Pour that into my mixing cup. And for the polyester casting resin, it uses hardening drops. And I'm not sure exactly how many drops it says to use on the jar of it, on the gallon jug, but I use 9 drops to start, and then 9 drops for every ounce thereafter. So for 2 ounces of resin, I'm going to use 27 drops of hardener. So I should explain to you that we're doing this in a layered fashion because Orgonite is made of layers. And it started out with being organic and inorganic layers respectively. And then in about the year 2000, I think it was Carol Croft who came up with the idea of using crystals, metals, and gemstones for the organic and inorganic material. So that's why we are putting them together and they act as a filtration device to protect from the EMF radiation coming from cell phones, Wi-Fi towers, among other negative energies. Turns negative energies into positive energies. So I'm just pouring the slightest little bit in each of the cavities. Yeah, so I didn't use all my resin. In fact, I've got at least a half an ounce left, so I would go with just an ounce and a half for these types of molds. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my crystals in. And now my spirals. Okay, so, oh, I forgot the steel hearts. All right, we're off to a good start. So in about an hour, I'll come back and we'll do the second layer of the polyester casting resin side. And we're just gonna keep our epoxy resin to be curing for until it is congealed and we can pour our next layer. So I will see you guys when we're ready. Okay, so it's been about 45 minutes and my first layer of the polyester casting resin has congealed. So it's time for us to do our next step. And I also want to tell you that with my extra resin, I went ahead and poured 3 more hearts and I colored that. This whole side I didn't color because I wanted the forefront piece to be in clear resin so you could see it for the color it was. And then now I'm going to put color behind it so you can see through that clear layer. These 3, I just went ahead and colored them even with the front piece still in there. So I'm going to pour about an ounce and a half of resin. So with an ounce and a half of resin, I'm going to use about 23 drops of hardener. So I'm going to pour some of my resin in another mixing cup. And then I'm going to tint this color. I'm going to use an alcohol ink. I'll use 2 drops of the peach red. Okay, so I've got those 3 poured. I'm going to add a little bit of beach sand. And we just want to make sure that that gets mixed in there. I'm going to pour some of the resin in one of my smaller measuring cups. And we're going to tint this one yellow. And I have 2 yellows in this set, so I'm going to use both of them in one. Okay, so now I'm on to green. Okay, so we have all our colors and our beach sand has been put in. So we're just going to let this congeal and we'll be back to put on our metal. Okay, so it's been another 45 minutes and it's time to pour the back layer of our polyester casting resin side. And so I'm going to make up about 1.5 ounces of resin, and to that I'm going to add about 20 drops of hardener. Okay, it has congealed, so we can go ahead and start putting in our BBs. Okay, so I'm going to let this completely harden, and that's going to take several hours, and I will be back to do the next step of our epoxy resin with alcohol inks, so stay tuned. Okay, so it's been about 3 hours and 15 minutes since I poured the epoxy resin into our mold, and I want to do the next layer. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna do about 1 ounce of full ounce of resin, which is 1/2 ounce of each part. So I'm just adding the beach sand. Okay, so I will be back in probably 3 more hours to do our metal. Okay, so I'm ready to add my metal to the epoxy resin pieces. Actually, I'm going to start with my BBs first. Okay, so we're all set with our polyester casting resin, and we just finished our epoxy resin pieces, and I will be back either later tonight or in the morning to demold the polyester casting resin, and we'll get to the epoxy when that has cured. So join me when we come back. Okay, so it's the next morning and it's time to demold our project, both our polyester casting resin and our epoxy resin. Let's see how they turned out. Okay, there you have it. We are demolded, and now it's time for me to sand these edges. And whenever I sand the edges, I'll be back for us to put on the bales. So I'll see you then. So we've demolded our pieces, and I have sanded the bottoms of them so they're smooth. And so I just wanted to show you some of the results. Like this is our alcohol inks in epoxy resin. This is another one. I think that's really pretty. I like the abstract look of them. So those are the effects you can get with the alcohol inks. And so from our colored, we have the spiral, we have the crystal, and we have the steel heart. So I'm going to glue bales on the backs of them, and then we will clear coat the front of it. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that I got all the glue-on bales glued on. So I'm just going to let them dry, and when I come back I'm going to clear coat it, and after that we'll put on the key ring. Join me. Okay, so I have clear coated all of the pet tags, and I have added the key rings so they will sit on your pet's collar. And this is how one of them turned out. One of the alcohol inks in epoxy resin. I like this one. This one's my favorite epoxy resin alcohol inks one. And let's see how some of the polyester ones did. I think they're really cute, and I think they're going to accent your pet's collar really nicely, especially for cats and small dogs. This is the perfect piece. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a big thumbs up. I certainly appreciate it. And subscribe to my channel for more Orgonite inspirations and ideas. And don't forget to hit that notification bell if you want to be notified of new projects as they come out. I'm Orgone Nick, and thank you for joining me in my Orgonite studio today. Have yourself a wonderful rest of your day. So if you're interested in any of the pieces I make here on my channel, head on over to Etsy and look in my shop. You're welcome to see what I have and purchase anything that I post on there. I will leave the link for my Etsy shop in the description box.